to Ask Earl Anything. This is the show where your questions make the show. If I don't have questions, I don't have a show. This is the first Ask Earl Anything in the month of March. So let's get started. A couple things. First, want to talk about, I always do a shout out in the beginning. And I've got a bunch of questions. Last week I did a show on YouTube, copyright and getting blocked, and that's where I got a lot of these questions from. So for this week's Ask Earl Anything, but they're not all questions about that. There are other questions that came in after the end of that video. Now, one of the interesting things that happened last weekend was I have an Instagram account. I talk about my Instagram account occasionally. It's at Earl Drum at Instagram. If you're one of my followers on YouTube and you're an Instagram person, please follow me. I'd appreciate it. A lot of times you'll see the videos that I'm going to be putting out soon that aren't out yet. They'll come out, clips of them will come out earlier on Instagram. I have a tendency to put out my favorite stuff from the weekend at the beginning of the week all the time. So, and that stuff doesn't always, those videos don't always come out first, if you know what I mean. But last weekend I was on, and I follow Bonhamology, which is George Fludas's YouTube channel. And you guys that know George, you know him as the bottom guy. But on YouTube, he puts a lot of jazz stuff up, and he's a good jazz player, excellent jazz player. And he had a post from a jazz drummer named Gregory Hutchison. Now, Gregory Hutchison was talking about the dilemma of the jazz drummers / gospel drummers of Instagram, and a video that came out from my shout out today. Now, there's a guy I've been watching for probably as long as I've been doing this YouTube channel officially, 16 or 17. Maybe before that I started watching him. His name is Nate. He's the 80-20 drummer. Now, he gives a lot of, I think he came from Berkeley or one of those schools, and he's got a lot of jazz concepts, and he teaches jazz and gospel licks, and he's one of those, he's a good player, but he's a teacher, and that's how he makes a living, as a teacher. I'm sure he plays too, but he's got a YouTube channel, he's got his own website, he's hawking lessons, you know, just like everybody today. And Nate did a video, and the video was called Flurries, the new hotness in jazz drumming. Now, most of you, I don't use the term flurry, I never thought of it, but a flurry to him is some kind of a, you know, fast pattern, you know, be it doubles or a paradiddle or something, or maybe a 6-stroke roll or something that you throw in the middle of something. Those kind of, some people call them hurdas, but I think a hurda is something slightly different. But basically, he was talking about learning these crazy sticking patterns to kind of be the new jazz drummer. And Gregory Hutchison is an older jazz drummer. He's not old. He's not as old as me. I think he's in the early 50s range, or around 50 years old. And he went off on Nate's show and on the concept of flurries and the drummers that just throw stuff all over the place. And pretty much, I like to call it vomiting over the drums, because it's just, and it looks really cool. And on short little clips, I guess it kind of translates on Instagram, because they get way more views than I get with my crazy songs I put up there. But that kind of vomiting over the drum thing is pretty wild. So anyhow, I want to shout out to Nate, because Nate's a great channel, 80-20 drummer. Check him out. And even Gregory Hutchison, or Hutch as he goes by, really said it really wasn't his problem, the 80-20 drummer, Nate's problem. It was really something that he just needed to say to the community, pretty much, and say, if you want to be a jazz drummer, learn the vocabulary of being a jazz drummer. And that's what I think is being lost. And one of the examples he gave in the video was George Fludas as an example of a guy that knows the vocabulary of jazz. So when you're learning all your licks and you're learning you're learning sticking patterns and you're watching the guys on Instagram that got all the speed, remember, speed has to translate into some kind of a language that you're going to use on the drum kit. And that language is the vocabulary that you play. So I just thought that was an interesting conversation. So if you follow Hutch, check that one conversation out. It's pretty famous right now. And if you're a fan of the jazz drumming thing and the gospel chops thing, check Nate's channel out. He's one of those guys that does that. I think most of the guys that watch my channel are music guys. They like watching certain types of music that I play. Some of you listen to what I have to say about drums, and we're going to talk a lot about drums today. But I wanted to throw out to George Fludas, Bonhamology, and 8020 drummer today, and just say, these are two good YouTube channels. Check them both out. Great players, both of them. All right. So today we're going to start with the first question. Comes from my friend Laurie Jones. Now, Laurie Jones is somebody from, I think it's Wales, but it's out there. It's not UK. So Laurie, you can kick me. You've been a friend for a long time on here. I'm pretty sure it's Wales. You got a little flag there. I just can't, I know it's not UK, but I think it's Wales. I don't think it's Ireland, and I don't think it's Scotland. So I think it's Wales. Could be Isle of Man for all I know. I don't know the difference, by the way. But here's the question anyhow for Laurie. He says to me, how do you choose what you're going to play? Meaning what song I'm going to play. Now that's a loaded question. And in actuality, it ties into another question. So let me give that question too. I want to find it right here. So I kind of tie them together. And this came out of the conversation we had last week on the publishing issues. But let me find the question. Notice it's on my iPad, so things aren't tied together properly. Let's see, where is it? So Ron Globe and Laurie Jones basically say, Laurie's asking the question about how I choose music, and Ron Globe asked me the question where I choose my music. What downloader sites are my favorite downloader sites? I assume he's talking about Amazon Music, Spotify, or iTunes. So let me jump back to Laurie's question. So Laurie's question was this, how do you pick songs? Well, the way I pick songs is by listening to music. And it really comes in during the week, the week before the weekend when I'm going to cut tracks. And I start thinking, what songs would I like to play? Now, my wife and I have a Spotify playlist that we listen to a lot. I listen to a lot when I'm driving. I haven't been driving a lot during COVID. It's called Earl's Soft Rock Favorites. So you hear me doing a lot of the soft, mellow rock of the 70s and some 80s. These are songs that I grew up with that make me feel happy. And as you get older in life, you want to listen to music that makes you feel happy. You guys will have music that sounds like Britney Spears and, the 2000s, some of you millennials, you'll have maybe it's rap music, or maybe it'll be some type of alternative music. You'll have something that'll be something that brings you back to your childhood. What brings me back to my childhood is AM pop radio of the 70s and FM, album-oriented rock radio of the 70s and 80s. That's really what brings me to it. So now with Spotify, I can find any song I want and pretty much play any song I want because of that. So really where I get my inspiration for doing songs comes from my memory of songs. And and having a playlist that's called Earl's Soft Rock Favorites, and it has 500 and something songs in it. And that's everything from, Helen Reddy to Melissa Manchester to Barry Manilow to the Partridge Family to James Taylor to the Beatles to Chicago, and then a lot of one-hit wonders in between. And then I've got my soul music stuff that I'm into too, like Motown and the sound of Philadelphia. So you got the Spinners, you've got the Temptations, you got the Four Tops. I've got music that's like just broad range of music, and from ballads to rock songs to danceable music. And this playlist just keeps growing as I find more songs. So what I do is I basically listen to that playlist, or a song comes to my head that I hear somewhere, and I say, hey, I want to add it to that playlist. And then I go find the song on Spotify, and I pretty much record it into a Logic file. I have a Logic file called, I think I call it New Music. It's pretty much it. And I just basically record a track, and I make a Spotify playlist. I make a Spotify playlist of future music. And what I'll do is I'll hit record on Logic, and then I'll send it back into Logic from Spotify. So Spotify goes out to my board, and my board comes back into Logic on two tracks, and I record. And I record it, and then I chop it up, and I segment it into songs, and I put it into another folder, and then from that folder I put it into X track stems, and then I create drumless tracks, and then I bring it back into Logic as drumless tracks, as stems, and then I record the songs. And I do this during the week. I think about songs I want to play, and whatever hits me. This month has been specifically R&B and gospel songs for Black History Month. And so the month of February, I've been playing a lot of R&B, a lot of soul music. But I play R&B and soul music periodically. Jackson 5 or Earth, Wind, and Fire. I mean, whatever hits me on a certain week, I'll play. But this month, I've been really trying to be really specific, and I think I found some pretty cool songs for the month. But that's my process. It's what comes into my brain, what I haven't done before, what excites me to play. And if I hear something, I go, oh yeah, I want to do that. I put the song in my list, and sometimes I don't get to it for weeks. Sometimes I'll actually record maybe 10 songs, and I'll only use 4 or 5 or 7 of them or something. And then I'll come back a month later and go, oh, I forgot about this one, and I'll put it in. And the list just keeps growing and changing all the time. But that's pretty much my process. It's from Spotify, which I've had for probably about now 5-6 years. Spotify was the best investment. I mean, I felt bad initially getting Spotify, to be honest. I spent the previous 5-6 years buying songs on iTunes. So I have quite an iTunes library as well that I've acquired. I have like 21 days of music on my computer, on my iTunes. But I stopped paying for iTunes because I realized iTunes doesn't pay the artist anything any more than if you download it than if you stream it almost. I don't think the difference is big enough for me to keep buying on iTunes. iTunes makes most of the money. Spotify makes most of the money. This is the problem with streaming music today, and the fact that that's the best way to get music on your phone. And iTunes did not make it easy to take it from you downloaded it and put it on your phone and play it. It just doesn't make it easy. Nothing's easy, and you want to store things in the cloud, and it's just a pain. Spotify is just so simple, and Spotify has just about every album I want. And one of the things I enjoy about Spotify is I have some favorite albums that I love, and then I have some albums I never had but I always wanted, and I'll go back and I'll just listen to the whole album from top to bottom. And that's the way music was created, by the way. It was created to be listened as albums back in my day. So now we're back to the 1950s with 45 singles, and you're paying to listen to singles, and everything's all mixed up, in some kind of like a stack of 45s dropping on the record player. I don't know how many of you guys remember that one, but for me, album-oriented rock changed that, and I started listening to the whole album. So, by the way, check out another channel, another shout-out. Jeff Holden changed it to The Music Room, and that's what he's doing. He's doing a lot of albums he's getting and reviewing them. He just had a big hit with the Wolfie Van Halen new song. He kind of premiered it or something, and it got him some good views. So check Jeff's new channel out. Even if he's not doing drum covers, he may do one once in a while, but check out his new channel. He's talking about listening to albums. That's what he's talking about. So that's the way I look at it. But Spotify is just great for that, but I feel bad that I'm not contributing to the musician's wallet, so to speak. But then again, everybody's doing this, so what does it matter anymore? All right, this is another video. This is from Blake Nunn Drums, a new friend. Blake said to me, this was about the copyright. He said to me, he says, do you ever manipulate the arrangements slightly to get away from copyright strikes? So going back to copyright infringement, these are one of the questions that comes up, is the idea of how do you avoid a copyright strike? Now, first off, I haven't gotten any copyright strikes because I always go to private when I put my music up. So I never put anything in straight to YouTube anymore. I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. Very early on, I used to do that. Now it goes straight to private and it sits there and it waits to see if the copyright works. Now, my friend Drumman190, who's got a couple questions today, he did a similar video the same week about the copyright and his process for that. And I think Rich Raw Dog's got he's got a question. I'm going to say to his question, but he commented on that same question that he takes a segment of the new song that he's going to play and he uploads like a minute of it to YouTube to see if it's going to pass the copyright muster, so he doesn't waste his time on the cover. Matthew, Drumman190, he basically takes the whole drumless track or whatever he's working with and he puts it into a video file and then he uploads it onto YouTube. And if it fails the copyright test, then he doesn't do it. I, on the other hand, am fearless, which is why I've got 8 videos that I haven't got up there yet. They're just sitting there in the can that will probably never get on YouTube because they are blocked. But so the question from Blake Nunn Drums is, do you ever think about detuning it in some way and then putting it back up? And I will tell you my one experience with this, and this almost got me a copyright strike, which was Paul Simon's 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. The first time I put Paul Simon's 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, I put it directly to YouTube, right up, and it got a strike. It got basically blocked by YouTube. And they said, we're going to give you a copyright strike if you don't take this down. It was like a warning kind of thing. So I took it down. And then I went back in and I changed the pitch of the song, lowered it, uploaded it again, bam, again. You're going to get a strike if you try to load this, upload this again. And I realized changing the pitch wasn't going to help me. So I've learned that that doesn't really work. Now, I have done it a couple times. One time it did work. I think it was All Right Now by Free. There was a drumless track on YouTube, and it was in the correct key, and I did the whole drum cover, and then it wouldn't get up there. And what I did was I went into Logic and I pitched it down, I think, in pitch like 2 cents. It sounds kind of weird. It doesn't sound like the original track because they wouldn't let me put the original track up there. But I spent all the time doing that cover. It really teed me that day. So I've done it once or twice, but I normally don't do it. If it doesn't get up, I'm not going to put it up. I'm not going to like take Roberta Flack's song and change the pitch of it and try to put it up there. It's just not going to sound the same, and it's just not the vibe I want. I like doing the original music, so I lose once in a while. But I hope that answers the question, Blake, because that's a really good question. All right, I'm looking for Rich's question because it is in here somewhere. I thought I had a Rich question. Oh, there's Rich's question. So the next question comes from Rich Raw Dog. Rich asks a question, do you ever run out of ideas for covers? I should have covered that with the last one, with the Ron question and the Lori question. Do I ever run out of ideas for covers? Well, I will tell you that having Spotify has helped me not to run out of ideas. But every once in a while, I kind of feel dry, like I don't know what I want to do. And that's where having all these drumless tracks I've created ahead of time, I'll sometimes go find something to play. But I love music. And you can tell I love music because I play all kinds of music. I'm not afraid to try stuff. So what I try to do with music, though, Rich, is this. I try to do songs that inspire me. early on in my YouTube career, there was only so many drumless tracks, and I found myself trying to do stuff that doesn't inspire me. Now, I'm not a big metal guy. Can I play a metal tune? Yes. Do I play it as well as Trey B plays it? Probably not. If you've listened to Trey play, he kills these metal tunes he's playing. And he plays all the genre. I mean, he's not just Metallica. It's the genre of metal. He even finds all kinds of stuff. Maybe it's death metal. Maybe it's hardcore. I don't know what we call music anymore. But when you hear Trey do his double bass stuff, he is killing it. Okay? There are guys that kill it. Gimme Mo. He kills it. It's his thing. It's what he loves. Neville from, I don't know if he's from Turkey or from Greece, or he's from somewhere in Southern Europe, I believe. He uses UFIPs. Neville's another guy. He just kills the stuff he plays. You know, so when I hear guys that really play that style of music, I don't want to jump on it. It's not my thing. You know, I could get away with doing hairband stuff if I had to, and I play that style all the time in church. A lot of times, a lot of the church music comes from that washy, basic beat stuff. You know, 4 on the floor or boom, bah. You know, and it's really rocking hard. I've played with guys that rock hard, so it's not a problem rocking hard. But I don't go to that music for inspiration. So what I want to play is music that inspires me. And that's where this going to Spotify and finding the song that brings me back to my childhood. And a lot of times I played these songs as a kid. Some I haven't, by the way. But like all this R&B stuff I've been doing, I've been listening to it forever. I mean, I've been listening to this, so it's in me, you know. And every once in a while I get on a gig and someone will call one of these tunes. But in actuality, I didn't spend a lot of time playing it. I mean, I've learned some really important things about playing drums on R&B tunes that I did not know when I was 17. I used to have the busy foot thing. You know, always playing. Always doing the dumps, boom, booms. You know, so if I'm doing a groove, even if I was doing like a straight groove, like I'd always be playing ba-bums, ba-bums, ba-bums. Well, R&B music is not that way. A lot of times 4 on the floor. So I've become a much more mature player in the last 20 years. Last 10 for sure, and especially doing a lot of studio stuff that I've done over the last 20 years, and I can tell you that I've simplified my bass drum pattern, and that's R&B music. And when I'm playing the Spinners, or I'm playing, who was it I played the other day? Another one of the Philadelphia Sounds guys. I was playing the OJs, and I'm trying to think of the name of the guy. I just released it today. I hate that. Harold and the Blue Notes. Is that what it is? Harold? Man, I'm sorry. But anyhow, when I'm playing that style of music, it's 4 on the floor, and you hear it, man. You really hear it, and it really locks in with the bass player. So I've learned some really important stuff about playing that style of music, so it comes out way more authentic today. And playing in bands and stuff. But I wish I had that in the 80s when I first started playing weddings and stuff. I wish I had more of a Les foot, less of a Danny Seraphin foot, and more of a simple Jeff Beccaro foot, or Jim Keltner foot, or any of those Benny Benjamin foot, you know, from Motown. Those guys had like this simple bass drum. They knew how to play it and really lock it in, and that's really what made those songs. So. But Rich, I guess I got sidetracked. The answer to the question is, yeah, I play stuff that inspires me. I go back to find stuff that inspires me. And as long as I'm inspired, I have fun doing it. And that could be anything, by the way. But that early YouTube experience of trying to play those things, I don't think I played as authentically. I think you guys are seeing my joy now in the last year since I've been playing music I want to play. Like a lot of you comment, oh, you play that Chicago stuff so well. Well, the reason why is I love the Chicago stuff. I've got like 50 songs on my Chicago playlist because I played all those albums. The first 11 albums, I played cold, back to front, all the time. Every song on the album I tried to play. I didn't play it well maybe, but I tried, you know. Chicago, Hot Streets, 13 and 14 I played pretty well. And then by 16 I stopped kind of like really playing along to Chicago. I was married by that time. I got married the next year, so it all changed. And then after that, Chicago kind of changed too, so it was kind of a mutual thing. And I was playing gigs, and that's where I had to play songs. So I had to learn songs to play on gigs. But that's a great question, though. Do I ever run out of ideas? I would say having Spotify has helped me not to run out of ideas. So, all right, here's another question from Laurie Jones. Different question. He asks, what's the best mic for bass drums and toms? Now that's a loaded question too, and I'm sitting here at my concert tom kit for a reason this week. I'm going to talk about RIMS mounts. There's a question about that, but the microphones on this kit right now is a hodgepodge of microphones that I normally wouldn't put on a drum kit. But I've been watching my friend Chadwick Perry. You should follow Chadwick. He's another guy to follow. Chad has some Octava mics. These are two Octava mics. By the way, these are two Octava mics above my head. But he has two large diaphragm condensers. One is a 13, and then I think he has a different one. This is the 319, and then there's another one. Anyhow, this is a large diaphragm condenser. This is a ribbon mic. This is a Russian-made ribbon mic. I think it's the 52, MK52, I believe, Octava. These are original Russian mics from early 2000s when Guitar Center had Russian mics, not the ones made in China. These are the Russian capsule MK012s, Octavas. Sound beautiful. They're beautiful sounding, and I got them cheap. I got all these mics cheap. This is my son-in-law's Sterling. Oh, it's actually a GT Audio, GT55 Sterling. Now it's called Sterling, but GT Audio is groove tubes. This is another large diaphragm condenser. So I'm using some condenser mics right on the toms. By the way, that you see that in studios, you see U87s or something over the toms once in a while. So I was trying that sound, and it actually sounds really cool. It actually works. So, but normally I use dynamic mics on the toms. So my favorite dynamic mics are on my other kit, which are the Sennheiser E604s. And that's the best drum miking kit there is for toms. I have two favorite bass drum, actually I have there's a couple bass drum mics you can use. My favorite bass drum mic is a Beta 52, Shure Beta 52, and it's found on my main kit. The bass drum mic on this kit is an AKG D112E, another great microphone. And then of course for snare drum you use an SM57. But usually you use dynamic microphones for your toms and your snare, and for your kick. Usually it's dynamic. But there are no rules to miking drums. And as you can see, I use whatever I want to use. Now overheads are a different story. You want to go for small diaphragm condensers, but you can use large diaphragm condensers as overheads too. So there's like really no rules here. It's just whatever you want to use. But I've been getting a really interesting sound with this. Sometimes the snare hits pop this thing too much. I have to do extreme gating on it. And this has a level difference. So I have to sometimes put a little gain on that to get that taste to come out. But yeah, use what you've got is what I always tell guys. So, but if you're gonna buy a set, buy the E604s. I've used 57s on the toms. They sound great. I have some 57s I use occasionally. I've used some of the cheaper mic kits, but anyhow, hope that helps. That's a good question, Lori. Okay, next question for Ask Earl. Let's see. I got that one. A new friend, Steve, on the drums. Steve asks, for a future episode, this is the RIMS mount question. He says, you're using the RIMS mounting system on your toms. If yes, what are the pluses and minuses of using the RIMS system, I assume? If they are not RIMS on, what are they on your toms? He's been contemplating another system. He has some Ludwig Atlas mounts. So he wants to know the reason for the RIMS mounts. Well, let's talk about RIMS mounts for a moment here. Truthfully, my Gretsch kit, my main Gretsch kit, came, and I'm gonna tell a story about the Gretsch kit. I said I might do this. Let's go back to 1979. In 1979, there were a couple companies that made good drum mounting systems. And that's right around the time the RIMS mount started to be created too. So Gary Geiger, the creator of the RIMS mount, he created it somewhere around 1979-80 for studio drummers. So your top mounting systems in 1979 would have been the Slingerland Swivel-matic, the Ludwig, traditional Ludwig little L-arm thing, the Ludwig mount. Then there was the Rogers memory lock hardware, which was extremely beast-like. And Tama had a similar L-arm scenario like Ludwig, little different diameter, but they were copying Ludwig at the time. Their lugs looked like Rogers and their tom mounts looked like Ludwig. Pearl was trying to copy Rogers too, and their original tom mount in 1975 had kind of a hex kind of thing, similar to the Swivel-matic one. But now that Rogers went to the memory lock, which was this big 1-inch tube going through the drum, Pearl decided to go to 7/8 tubing, and they made the classic 7/8 L-arm tom mounts. Now, why am I telling this story? Well, the reason I'm telling this story is my Gretsch kit, my 1979 Gretsch kit, which I bought at Professional Percussion Center in New York City, Frank Ippolito's store, turned into Jane Ippolito's store because Frank died. They were selling Gretsch drums without Gretsch hardware because Gretsch hardware was so terrible. Gretsch had the worst hardware for mounting a drum or a floor tom leg, by the way, of any of the drum companies at the time. They were the worst. Now my floor tom legs have the Gretsch diamond floor tom legs, but my toms, they have Pearl 7/8 L arms that go into the shell, and they were drilled for the shell. And they basically took this arm, they drill a 7/8 or hole, and then you put the tom mount on it and it attaches to the shell. Now, this is before RIMS mounts, came out. But the reason for the RIMS mounts was that Gary Geiger discovered that the shell being attached to something like that or having something protruding through it like the Rogers memory lock hardware or the Swivel-matic hardware or the Fibes tom arm that went through it or the Pearl tom arms that went through it, it killed the resonance of the shell. And my Gretsch drums were kind of a dead sound. It was kind of like a really dead sound. It didn't sound as beautiful as they sound today. I didn't get the idea to buy RIMS mounts until 1988 when I went to Nashville to do an album. And I recorded on a set of drums at Hummingbird Studios, which was a known jingle factory in Nashville. It was up on the top of the BMI building, which is no longer there. Now they're condos. But the BMI building was this big, tall building on Music Row. And Hummingbird Studios was at the top. And the drummer that did a lot of jingle work there, apparently, was a guy named Dennis Holt. And Dennis Holt is the drummer that played on a lot of contemporary Christian music, too. So he was in the CCM scene, and he toured with Greg Volz and different bands. He toured with a lot of bands. He's played with a lot of people. He's still out there playing today. Amazing drummer. He had a set of Fiberglass Pearl power toms, 8x8 I think it was an 8x10, a 10x12, and a 12x14. And he had a little Ludwig 16x18 bass drum that was silver silk, and it had two, it basically was a floor tom converted to a bass drum. And it had a little, it had the wood hoops on it. And that was the kit that was set up. It was set up with the 10, the 12, and the 14 double-headed toms. And it had RIMS mounts on it. And when I went into the studio to cut this album, he said, oh, the drums are back there, and I started messing with the drums. And I saw the 8x8 laying there, so I said, oh, let's put the 8x8 here, the 10, the 12, the 14, you know, because I'm thinking I want to have like some kind of a Jeff Porcaro thing with the extra third tom, you know, and I'm going to be playing all these fills anyhow, and I got this all figured out. So now the engineer mics everything, and then we start doing sound check, and I hit the 8-inch tom, and the thing's dead. And then I hit the 10-inch tom, it goes boom. 8-inch tom goes dum, dum. This goes boom. 12 goes boom. 14 goes boom. It's singing. And he goes to me, he goes, take that other drum down. That doesn't fit, doesn't match. I said, what do you mean? He goes, doesn't sound right. Those other toms are mounted with that RIMS mounting system, and it just makes the drums sing. They just kind of ring out. And that was the first time I really understood that putting a tom arm through the shell kills a drum. So when I got home from that studio session, which is a whole other story I won't get into today, the first thing I bought was some RIMS mounts. And I bought a 10 and a 12. And then I had my 14, 16 floor tom. I eventually bought the 13 and the 8. And then I eventually bought a 14 and a 16. And I had RIMS mounts for that whole kit. I can mount them all up like Steve Gadd style for the floor toms and the 10 and the 12 and the 13. So I think RIMS mounts are really important for getting that singing sound. And especially if you've got tom arms that are going into the shell. Now, I didn't notice that with Ludwig drums, because Ludwig had the L arm, and the mounting bracket was on the outside of the shell, and it didn't go into the shell. Now, the question is, why do you have RIMS mounts on your concert toms? And the reason I have RIMS mounts on my concert toms is because I've been using this 7/8 Pearl hardware for so long that I have every RIMS mount I had was 7/8 Pearl hardware. And when I really got this kit together where I wanted to use it, because the clip mounts, I didn't have enough stands, number one. If you ever use the clip mount stands, they only go one direction at you. You can't turn them in towards each other like this, like turning towards each other. So what I did was, I said, if I put these on RIMS mounts, it's not so much for singing, because concert toms I don't want them to sing. I want them to be dead. I'm really not looking for singing out of it, but they probably have a little more sing. Probably has a little more sing than they would if they were mounted straight in or with the arms going through it. But these are done to mount the tom, so I don't really have to drill holes in it and put the bracket into the drum. I thought about it. I thought about drilling it, but I've drilled one other drum that way, and I will never do that again, which was my 14x14 floor tom, by the way. Those Gretsch drums out there are over 40 years old, and every nick, every dent, every drilled hole that's extra, I did it all. I did everything to those drums. So those drums are mine, and when I sell them, I'm not going to get like pristine sale price. I don't really give a crap. They're mine. And I had a lot of fun with those drums. I am fearless with the drill. Matter of fact, if you look at some of these concert toms, you'll find that I put the Ludwig bracket on it for a while on a couple of the drums. But truthfully, what I found is this really works, and the RIMS mounts really work, but they make the drums sing. So I hope that answers the question, Steve. That's the long question, answer to the question. And I kind of went into the Gretsch story. This was for Gabriel Landa. He asked me about, and I don't think he expected me to answer this. I said, but I thought to myself, I want to tell the Gretsch story, where I got the 79 kit. I found this guy, Gabriel Landa. He has a Gretsch kit similar to mine. And I looked at it, and the bass drum looked like it was backwards, because the way the tom mounts were, they were way in. And And on that bass drum, the tom mounting plate is up in the front. He had it on the back. So I asked him a question. I said, are the feet backwards on that drum? And he didn't tell me if they were or not, but it seemed like it was flipped. And then he said, I took them off and I put them on the other side. And so I don't know what he did to that drum or if he got it that way, but I think I told him the right way to set it up now. So hopefully that helped him. Got a couple more questions. Drumman 190 questions. Sorry, Drumman, I put you to the end, but you tell me you watch my videos all the way to the end anyhow, so I'm glad you made it. I got 2 questions for you. Let's do the first question over here. First question is, do you see yourself getting another drum kit someday? And if so, what brand? That's a great question. I don't see myself buying a new drum kit. And if I was to buy a new drum kit, like more realistically, if I decided to buy another drum kit, I would probably buy a kit for playing at church, one of those small 16-inch bass drum kits, probably, with a couple toms for traveling, a travel kit. I've been looking at those. I have a very small kit. I got an 18, 12, 14. I'm thinking maybe a 10, 13, and a 16 to really get a punchy kit for church. But if I wanted to buy a new drum kit, what drums would I buy? I'd rather buy used, to be honest. I mean, if I could find some used Gretsch or some used Ludwig's old, those are the drums I enjoy. So I'm more likely to get my hands on a used kit than a new kit. But to buy new, the coolest new drums that I've seen that I really dig are the Tama Star series that Peter Erskine plays and Billy Cobham. I think they just sound amazing. They're well made. They're crafted a certain way. I don't think I would buy a Gretsch kit, but then again, if I could pick up a brand new Catalina kit in a certain color, I love those little Catalina kits. Those are one of my, I think that the lower end Catalina kits have a certain sound too, the mahogany sound. I don't know. The other kit, if I wanted to get the sound I wanted, because I really like to have a set of mahogany drums, probably getting a Ludwig kit that's the classic, super classic mahogany kit, not the maple one with the reinforcing rings. That would probably be a kit that I'd be interested in getting too. So the Tama Star drums are just the best drums built out there, I think, pretty much, And those Ludwigs that are the mahoganies, the super classic mahoganies, that's a certain sound. So me in drums, Drumman, is basically sound. It's about sound right now. I've got a beautiful maple Gretsch kit. I don't think anything's going to top that, but those Star drums might be close. They're beautiful, pretty drums too. Those are pretty beat up. But to be honest, you're more likely to buy some more Paiste crash cymbals. That's probably more likely. The other question is, do you have any original music? And that's a really good question. He also asked me to suggest some big band jazz music for him, and I did suggest it to him. And a few play-along books. There are a couple play-along books. Let's take the questions, 2 questions. Let's do the big band first. I answered this for you on here, and I know you know that. But I think if you're talking about classic jazz albums, what to listen to, anything Miles Davis, but I think something that's approachable for a new jazz listener would be Miles Davis's Kinda Blue with Jimmy Cobb playing drums. He really swings. He's not Tony. Tony plays way more outside, but I think he's more something you can relate to. Dave Brubeck, the album is called Time Out with Take 5 on it. That's an album to get. Blue Turk Rondo, I forget how it goes, but 3/14, dun 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 dun. Yeah, that's one you want to look at too. And then big band wise, Buddy Rich, you want to get a Buddy album. Count Basie or Duke Ellington. Those are two big bands worth listening to. And Mel Lewis, the Mel Lewis, Thad Jones big band. Those are great. I mean, there's some great big bands. Don't get me wrong. Stan Kenton's got a killing band. But I think Duke Ellington there's so many standards in Duke's book that you might want to listen to Duke Ellington. And there's a Duke Ellington play along big band chart book that I played all the charts from, which are just fun to play. They're a lot of fun setting up the figures and everything, so I recommend that highly. And then there's a book, Sitting In With the Big Band, I think it's called, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Those are two good books. Because tempo-wise, they're locked. I play a couple of these Music Minus Ones from the 70s. One is from the Jersey City State Band. I forget what it's called now, but I went to Jersey City State College, and I remember when they cut that album. So I have that, and I also have the Northern Lights, which is the Canadian jazz band. But that music is like all over the place, so it's really hard to lock into, and their tempos don't kind of stay for you. So plus there's a Jim Chapin play along too that the tempos kind of move. But I think that's some good jazz music to think about. And the last question is original music. I do not have any original music, but my wife does. And by the way, if you go to my channel on YouTube, there's a playlist called Stephanie Bennett Toward the Lamb. Now, I've thought about playing some of her music, like replaying it, but it's really, really mellow, inspirational music. I produced that album, so I'm very proud of that album. It's best listened to in order. I would say listen to it in order. And then you get the theme of the album from Seek My Face to Only You Satisfy. That's the last song and the first song. Just listen to the order of the playlist. But they're all designed to go into one another. All the songs kind of just segue into each other. There's actually, on the CD, there's actually a lot of segues. There's no breaks. But I'd promote that album. That's my wife's original music. It's found on YouTube. It's found on Spotify. It's inspirational. It's very mellow. I played some very tasty things on it and percussion things on it. I did all the editing on it. My friend helped me mix it. He pretty much mixed it. I kind of learned about mixing there. That was my great mixing lesson, was we remixed the album twice. And then we got it mastered by a professional named Bob Katz in Florida, who's done Grammy Award-winning records. Mastering jobs for. So anyhow, that's what I'm promoting, my wife's album. I've played on a bunch of other albums, so it's not my music, but the band, the church that I go to, we have an album on Spotify called Paradise Hymns. I've played on some of the newer stuff that's come out, a song called Arrow, and oh gosh, it's the Christmas song. I played on the Christmas song too with the jingles. Can't remember the name of it. But we've done a lot of some of the drum tracking down here at the studio. And I played on Danielle McManus's album, which is available on Spotify, and it was for the Shoreline Church. And I played drums on that. And I actually have some video clips of me playing along to it from the night of the concert on my channel somewhere. So there's music I've played on that you can find, and there's other artists I've played with that is out there. But I'd hawk my wife's album. That's my wife's, and we'll make the few half a cents on the views. So if you watch it, we'll get the 0.75 cents per view. So someday when it gets up to $30, they'll put it in the bank somewhere. That's how music works today. Anyhow, thank you for watching Ask Earl Anything. I know it was a long one, and it was pretty scattered all over the place, but hopefully you learned something today and enjoyed it. Here's a little trick for the future, how I deal with podcasts sometimes. I listen sometimes in 1.5 times. Makes it go quicker, but you get through the whole thing. So it's the way I actually listen to myself that way. Sometimes kind of funny. 2 is a little too fast. 1.25 is probably better If you want to listen to me in one, listen to me at one times. That's fine. That's the way it's supposed to be. So, anyhow, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Ask Earl Anything. Have a great day. Bye.